Welcome to our webinar, The Future of Project Closeout. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sharissa Jensen, and our webinar host is John Bennett, Director of Customer Success for Pipe. If you have questions during our presentation, please use the question function on the webinar control panel, and we'll answer them at the end. John, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Sharissa. Hello, good afternoon or early morning for some of you out there. My name is John Bennett. I'm the Director of Client Success here at Pipe. And what we're going to be talking to you about today is the future of Closeout. And the reason why we were doing this is what we've been doing over the last couple of months, actually probably the last year here, is we've been gathering a lot of feedback and information from people in the field with problems that they're facing from a closeout perspective. And we have a couple of different products that help with a couple of different processes within the construction process, but the one that really got my attention was the closeout piece. A lot of people are having a difficult time closing out their projects on time and meeting the specific demands of their owners, and then working with them through making sure that the facilities and maintenance teams are receiving packages of information that are actually actionable after the fact. And with this, what we found is a couple of different things as part of that process. Number one, we found that about 90% of the construction projects don't actually close out on time if they're left to their own devices. Reason being, there are a whole lot of other things that are happening on a project at the end that people are actually paying attention to. And the document collection, bringing in those O&Ms, making sure that training happens, gathering warranties, things like that, they tend to take a back seat because things like change orders, punch lists, and making sure that the full financial closeout of a project is completed falls by the wayside. Also, there are issues with making sure that subcontractors were turning that information in. In some cases, subs weren't aware of the things that were required of them from a closeout perspective. Also making sure that the facilities and maintenance team is up to date on all the things that they need to be successful once that building or that facility gets turned over. And the main complaint that we heard is that things are heavily paper driven, essentially in a construction world that's trying to move towards a more digital realm. So those were some of the key factors that we heard as we were trying to work on helping people close out their projects on time and get that retention money much faster. So what we did is we actually came up with two main products that actually work together, and you'll see here they're actually a seamless piece in a couple of minutes here. But what we wanted to do is we figured out that we needed to help people organize the process of getting all of their data collected from a closeout perspective. We wanted to provide automation for those people. Some of the manual processes that people need to carry out, your project administrator or your PEs or whoever else is assigned to collecting that closeout information, there are manual processes that they need to go through on a daily or weekly basis to get that information in. And with that, we could automate some of that. And then with that, we also wanted to bring in the coordination piece so that all the different stakeholders on the projects were actively involved, knew what their requirements were going to be, and provide them with an active way of getting that information turned in. And then once all that information is turned in, how do you extract that data out of a system, no matter what it is, if it's email, Box, Dropbox, or wherever else that information may be? How do you actually deliver an actionable turnover package to your owner so that their facilities and maintenance team can have something that they have the ability to work off of? So with that, what we did is come up with a couple of different areas, and we wanted to provide some business value to overall organizations. We wanted to provide some project level value as well, make sure those project teams are working well too. And then also, everything needs to be justified with some return on investment. People we figured we're going to be needing to spend some money on this, but they needed to see a return. And everyone on the call here can see some of that information that we've got laid out. One of the big numbers I just want to talk about when we're talking about ROI on this slide and the next one, we're going to be talking about a $10 million project with 15 subcontractors. Now, as those projects grow, the ROI on this actually grows exponentially. We can actually give you some data. So if you want to contact us after the fact to get some numbers on this, we can provide you with a more detailed look from a $10 million project to a $20 million project up the line as well. So we wanted to provide value up and down the entire organization, and then make sure that there was a return on investment for people as well for taking advantage of automating that platform for them. So just to give you an idea, just like I said, taking a look at a $10 million project, we have a bunch of projects within our system. We have access to a lot of data. We worked with a bunch of people internally and externally as some of our partners to get a better understanding of what was actually taking place during the closeout process. And this is what we found on average for a $10 million project that contained 115 subcontractors. In most cases, from a manual perspective, people were spending about 136 hours on closeout and gathering all of the requirements that they need to get turned in. Now, when you look at this from a perspective of paying a P or a PA fully burdened, right? So that includes everything included in at around $50 an hour at your cost. There's a $6,800 direct labor cost associated with getting that project closed out. And that's just not from a labor cost. There are other things that those people can be doing, and you can better utilize their time. So then we did an analysis of figuring out how does our product, how does Closeout and eBinder come in and actually play with this, and what does that look like? So you can see over on the right-hand side, these are some of the numbers that we worked with our partners and our clients on to come up with, where we're figuring out how much time they're set doing data aggregation and setup. So all of the different requirements that need to get turned in, what are those, who they need to be assigned to, and what does that look like? Part of that is also then going to be the follow-up of that. Well, people have been assigned information. They need to get documentation turned in. How often do I need to follow up with them? How much time needs to be spent in doing so? Also, the review process associated with that. People do turn in documentation as part of the closeout process, but someone needs to actually still go through, take a look at that, make sure the things that are being turned in are correct. They are to what's called for in the specifications, and then moving that along in the process, and then also compiling that turnover package at the very end. In most cases, that manual process, people are using some disparate systems, or in a lot of cases, I've been on site where project teams are printing this information out on a printer, or they're back at the home office printing this on a printer, grabbing a conference room table, getting all their closeout documentation printed out. They're printing a whole bunch of different slip sheets, trying to get a cover page designed, putting it all together into binders, and then they're actually going to hand deliver that to their owner. And then from there, getting a digital package based off that work that they've done manually is actually impossible to do after the fact. So these were some of the problems that we're looking at. This is some of the information and data that we found based on using our Closeout and eBinder platform versus doing things manually, and how we can move that through the process. Other things I want to talk about too, though, just quickly before this is from the ROI perspective. This is really just sort of your hard costs and the things that you were looking at from this. But what we found is with this time savings is that instead of spending 117 hours on this, 136 hours on this, people are only spending 19 in this case. So that provides them with another 117 hours that they have the ability to go through and worry about all of the other things that go on a project to get things closed out. So like I mentioned before, making sure that your change orders are all wrapped up and taken care of, making sure that the other financial pieces that you need to get taken care of are taken care of as well, making sure that all of your quality processes are wrapped up, punch list is complete, all of the rework that may need to have happened as a result of your punch list process is done, tracking down all those subs to come back in. So we found that just from a labor perspective, for a $10 million project with 15 subcontractors, you're typically looking at a $5,800 plus savings in that labor category. But outside of that, there's some other benefits to this too. In doing the research that we did and finding some of the information we have, just from a time value of money perspective, on average, the projects that we see, just to give you a good idea, for every 30 days that a project is not closed out from the time that it could be until it is, you're actually looking at about an $8,000 bump in a time value of money at current rates. So you can see that actually gets continued out. So if it goes 60 days, you're looking at over $16,000 on average per project as well. So that's money that you can bring back into your organization. It's essentially free money that you can have the ability to then use as part of your CapEx expenditures or anything else that you may be carrying out where you need cash flows to make sure that that takes care of it. from there. So that's some interesting analysis. If you'd like more information on this, please make sure to follow back up with us. We can provide you with a detailed look at all that information from there. And then with this, the other piece that we heard and we wanted to make sure that we took care of for people is we know that our clients and our other people out there are using different file systems, different types of project management software. There's a whole bunch of information out there that's sort of in disparate systems as an example. And how do you bring that all together? Well, at Pipe, we do have a lot of great partners that we work with. This is a list of some of the people that you see currently that we are working with. So if you do have your data or some data stored in one of these third-party data repositories in a project management system or someplace else, we can work with you either via direct integration, or my team here is available to help make sure that that information actually shows up in our Closeout platform. So that's the piece on why we did it, the information that we brought into the system, and then as a result, what we have done is, you guys will see here, I'm actually going to go into our brand new Closeout platform here. What we've done is created a brand new purpose-built Closeout platform to make sure that your projects get closed out on time, within the time frame that you need, and then you're also delivering an actionable turnover package to your owners. The ideal when we work with our clients is I want to make sure that you're going through and you're getting negotiated work after the fact, right? You keep your owners happy. We're going to make sure that we're going to try to get you that negotiated work, make sure we're providing with good actionable information to them at the very end, and making sure that that closeout process is very clean and easy. So what you're seeing here is our new Closeout platform. There's a bunch of different information here, but what I'm going to do first is actually jump into one of these projects. So this here is going to be a listing of all those different projects that we have available here. And I'm going to bring one of these projects open. And what you're seeing here in the first page that we navigate to, this was something that we got a lot of feedback on, is a lot of people from a project level or from an organizational level, all the way up from the CFO's office down to comptrollers, anyone who's got a financial purview within an organization, they weren't exactly sure what completion percentage their projects were from a closeout perspective. So that's the first thing that we wanted to do, is get right out ahead of this, show people exactly for this specific project exactly what their closeout completion percentage is, what the specific number of closeout requirements that need to get turned in are, how many have been turned in, how many have not been turned in. The other next move was, well, how do I get a better understanding of what my subcontractors are doing? Well, with that, we provided some more information on which subcontractors are actively participating in the closeout process by turning this information in. Also, we let you know which subcontractors are fully compliant with the requirements that they need to get turned in as part of that process too. So we're giving you some actionable information on your overall closeout completion percentage, and also how your subcontractors are doing as well, front and center here too. Also, when I scroll down, what we're going to do for you here is I'm just going to move down just a little bit. We're going to give you an idea of how you're tracking against your substantial completion date. So in this case, we are 14% complete from a closeout perspective. We have 200 days left till substantial completion. In my mind, when looking at this, we're doing pretty well so far on this job. We're going to probably have to do a lot of work at a slightly later date, but things are looking good now. And then what I can do from here is actually drill into my subcontractors and then also the requirements by the specific types here as well. So actually, let me just scroll down here. I really like this view here of my subcontractors with my submitted versus outstanding, and then also my submittal types with submitted versus outstanding. So what this information is doing for you here is showing you, just from an overall perspective, in this case, Orndorff and Spade, they owe us 15 total closeout requirements. Of those, 3 of them have been turned in. You can see this information here. And then also 12 of those have not. If I move down the list, it's going to give me an idea of per subcontractor how they're doing. So in this case, Architectural Products, they're not doing as well. They've got 9 outstanding items. Looks like everyone else except for JP Construction has the majority of their items in, or they've at least started the process. So if my superintendent on site is going to be having a stand-up meeting, I can get this information to them and they can directly address that with those subcontractors. Or if I'm going to be having any sort of coordination meeting, we are having a meeting on schedule, whatever it may be, I can actually show this information to my subs, or I can work with the specific people on site to make sure that all of these items are turned in and they're fully aware of the items that they need to get taken care of. Now, also on the right-hand side here, these submittal types by submitted versus outstanding. This is some information that's important because it's going to let you know the types of closeout requirements that need to get turned in on your project. So you can see here we have 17 special warranties that need to get turned in, 3 of which have been turned in, 14 have not. And you can see there's some other information on down the line. So we're providing you with some quick and easy information on the overall status of your project from a closeout perspective, letting you drill into your subcontractors, letting you drill into the submittal types. And then, as I mentioned previously, all this information is interactive. So as an example, if I want to see the 51 items that have not been turned in yet, I can just click on it from this list. The page is going to refresh for me. And then on this page, what it's going to do is actually provide me with a list of all of those 51 items that have not been turned in yet. Or, as an example, they have been turned in, but they actually need to be revised and resubmitted. And that was actually something I forgot to mention previously, and I'll talk about that more in a moment, is part of the key points of the system is the automation of the collection of the closeout requirements. And what that does and what we do with this process is we get the system set up for you. We help you align your subcontractors with the items that they need to get turned in from a closeout perspective. We actually turn the system on and let it run, and it's going to send automatic email notifications out on a specified basis. So typically, in a lot of cases, what I like to do is get these projects set up at least 6 months before the substantial completion date or the expected turnover date. And then from there, we set up monthly notifications to go out. As we get closer and closer to that expected turnover date, we like to ramp up the frequency of the actual emails that go out from the system so that the subcontractors who have outstanding items will then be pinged on those specific items continually until they get all that information turned in. The other part about that, which is nice, is subcontractors who have turned in their items already, they won't be receiving those notifications. So the system will only ping people via email for the outstanding items that they need to get turned in. If a subcontractor is fully complete, they're 100% compliant, they're not going to receive those email messages, and then you can worry about processing that final payment for them, as an example. So we automate that collection process from there. And then also just talking about setup too, I mentioned the 6-month time frame. One of the things that we like to do is I like to get this set up as early as possible on a project. So typically when an IFC set of specifications are issued, the closeout data is going to be included in that. We can use our AutoSpecs program to generate a closeout log for you, essentially automatically, present you with that log. You can do a little bit of review, and then we can work to get that system set up. So the earlier that we get this set up, the quicker that those specific closeout requirements can get turned in, and then you can get that turnover package turned into the owner on that expected substantial completion date or that expected turnover date. I've seen in some cases people have done it beforehand, or if they need to slide it out a little bit, you've got the ability to do so. So the success doesn't hinge on the amount of time that you get to set up, but it actually makes the process much smoother and gives you a little bit more breathing room as you move along in the process. So that's the dashboard. That's where all the current information about your project is going to be held. One other thing that I want to show you guys in here, if I go to the Submittals tab over on the left-hand side, this is where all your documentation or the closeout requirements are going to be held. With this, you can search through this information, you can filter through it, you can add requirements. One big requirement that we had from this is the ability to export this information out of the system. So you can see in this case, we've got the ability to export this list in Excel, CSV, or if we want to export it in a PDF format, we have the ability to do so. In a lot of cases, what people will do is utilize the filters or the search functionality to export some information out of the system. And then also you've got the ability to take some actions from within here. The number one thing that we see people do from within the system under this actions button is send notifications. So what they'll typically do is filter based on the type of submittal or the actual status of that submittal, so anything that's outstanding as an example, and then they'll select that send notifications to send notifications to their subcontractors on an ad hoc basis. So if you think about this in a different perspective, typically in these cases, what will happen in the trailer is someone will actually have to type up a list of all those outstanding requirements that a certain subcontractor hasn't turned in. They'll actually have to type up an email, get all that information in, get the email address in, and send that out. And that's actually a very time-consuming process. In a lot of cases, that's going to take you hours to do, and you have to do that continually to make sure that those subcontractors are turning in their documentation. With our automatic notifications button and then this ad hoc send notifications functionality into the system, you can quickly and easily do that. So you can see here, I can click on the send notifications button. I can then select which ones I would like to send these on. So I can say, okay, let's send these on our not submitted, select them all, click on this next button, and that's going to just walk me through the process of sending them. So you can see in a matter of minutes, probably 35, 45 seconds, I've got the ability to send emails out to all of my subcontractors with outstanding items, and instead of having to go through that manual process with Outlook, Gmail, or doing it some other way. So we provide you a quick and easy way of doing that. Now, when your subcontractors turn in their information, there is one thing we want to make sure that you have the ability to do, and that's review that documentation. So let's review that process now. So as information gets turned in, you'll have the ability to click on one of these folder icons for each of these individual items. And with this, we provide you with a live preview of what this documentation is going to look like. So in this case, this is just a standard roofing warranty, as you can see here. But let's say this was I required a special warranty, a 10-year special warranty, a 20-year special warranty, and they only provide me with this standard general warranty. Well, what I've got the ability to do is I can do a couple of different things. I can actually revise and resubmit. I can send this out to be revised and resubmitted, as you can see in this case, or I can send this information back or change the status of this specific requirement in any way, shape, or form. So as an example, let's say this has actually been approved. I've checked on this. This information is what I needed. I can say this has been approved and click this save button, and that will then move this into a different status. This has been approved by us. It's actually out of our purview now, and then we can move on to all of the other items that need to get turned in. So each of these have the ability to go through essentially a workflow for all of the requirements that get turned in. These workflows are configurable, so if you are working with an owner that has a specific workflow requirement for you to get this information turned in, we can work with you to get set up, get them access to the system, and then they can go through their process of approving all the information. Now, if you want to go through the standard way, have your subcontractors turn things in, you go through the approval process yourself, you've got the ability to do so all from right here as well. So that's how you can go through and review that documentation. We wanted to provide you with a live preview of it. That way you don't have to go through and actually download any documentation as well. Now, also, if I click into one of these individual items, there's some other information I want to show you here quickly. You can see here we've got all the information about the actual requirement that needs to get turned in. So this is a manufacturer's warranty. It's going to let you know the status it is. It will also allow you to provide target dates for getting this stuff turned in. All this other information, like the acceptance dates as an example, that will all be auto-populated for you based on when you approve it. We track all that information. You can see here under this user activity tab that I have here, all of the user activity that happens per specific closeout requirement is going to be tracked. So it's going to let you know who did what they did, and when they did it, back to the start of time for that specific requirement. So you can see here, I can scroll through this, and there were a bunch of us working on this specific requirement. It's going to let us know. So that way, just in case at a later date, maybe there's a claim, maybe your owner has some questions about a specific requirement that got turned in, you can come back, track this information, and see what happened from here as well. Now, the other thing that we do too here, outside of showing you the detailed documentation, is we provide the ability for your subcontractors, for your team, and anyone else who has access to the system to add in user notes to this. So as an example here, you can see, let's say they submitted a 1-year general warranty, and this actually is supposed to be a 5. Well, I can communicate that information to the subcontractor via this notes section. All that information will then be included and sent over to the subcontractor, and then they can add in any notes that they have, ask any questions, and we can have a general topic of conversation about this. The reason why we built this in is having this discussion via email or in person, number one, is inefficient, and also the tracking of this at a later date, there may be people who require this information. If there's a claim, we can always come back to here, see who worked on it, see what was done, and get everything figured out. So we've got the ability to track that activity, that history, also review our notes, and then see a detailed list of all that information for each of our closeout requirements as well. Now, there's some other information that I want to show you in here. I'll do that quickly, and then we'll open it up for questions. Now, the other pieces here is there's some points that I'm not actually going to go over, But one thing I want to point out is we do have a reporting functionality built in here that's going to provide you with some detailed reports on what's going on for each of your specific subcontractors, each of your requirements by type as an example. So what we do is we give you a full list of these specific reports. We let you know, just as an example, which of your subcontractors are participating, how many submittals or closeout requirements they need to get turned in, what that specific number is. We can get a compliance report. Also, we can get a submittal type report as an example. So how many pieces of attic stock do you need to get turned in? How many total are there? How many have been turned in as an example? So we're going to give you a full list of all of this information. And just like with anything else within the system, this can then be exported out. So if you need to report up to somebody, say there's a PM, a project executive, or someone further up the organization would like to know how you're doing from a submittal, from a closeout requirement perspective, from a subcontractor compliance perspective, you can add that information. And then some of our clients are actually getting pretty creative with this, because what they're doing is they're taking this information and they're actually ranking their subcontractors based on their closeout performance. If you'd like to get a further in-depth bit of information on that, please feel to reach out to me. I can provide you with some detailed information on how they're doing that and how they're trying to track that information, and then some of the steps that they're taking to make sure that they're providing the best information to their people when they're going out to get bid information, just as an example from there as well. So we've got a full bit of reporting functionality built in the system. All this stuff is automatic. You can export it out in Excel, CSV, or PDF format, and then get it out to the people who need it. Now, the last piece that I want to show you before we jump into questions here in the turnover packages is this portfolio page here. So what this is going to do is going to provide you with a view of all of the projects that you have within our system that are currently closing out. So you can see here in this case on the Promenade East project, we're 1% complete and with 164 days left until substantial completion. So that's something I may want to take a look at. Now, if we look at our Cyrus One data center as an example, we are 64% complete with 102 days left until substantial completion. Now, we're actually tracking very well on this one in this case. Now, granted, with data centers, in a lot of cases, those are a little bit more cookie cutter, so we can get that information in a little bit quicker. But it just provides me with a high-level overview of all of the different projects that we have within the system, how they're tracking, and then what some of our clients are doing is they're actually taking this information, reporting it up through the financial office within their organization so that they can get a better understanding of where cash flows may be being held up. So one of the things that people can do is you can apply these percentages to the retention payments that are going to be outstanding for these projects, get a better understanding of where some cash flows may be held up for you, where some final payments may be held up for you, and then you can work with those project teams to address that, to make sure that that money is coming into the organization so that you can get it all back out. Which also brings me to another interesting number. As we were going through this process, we found that typically about 95% of your profit margin on a project is going to be tied to the closeout requirements being turned in and you turning over a successful turnover package. The reason being, we took your typical market rate for your profit margin, what your retention payments are, what those final payments to your subcontractors are going to be, and then we found that around 95% of that money is going to be tied up to this specific process. And that really shows you exactly what that profit and loss may look like if your turnover process, your closeout process is not successful. So we've got that information here. Now, the last thing I want to show you before we turn it over to questions here, and we got about 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure we take care of those, is how do you generate a turnover package once all that information is turned in? Well, what we've done for you, if you see here, I'm going to click on this Generate Turnover Package button, and you can see here, I can either generate it, show it live, or download it. I'm going to generate it live for you here. What we do is we can select the specific items that we want to include in our turnover package. With this, I can filter. So if I just want to do my O&Ms, say the owner wants O&Ms turned over early, or the architect wants to take a look at that information ahead of time, I can actually generate that turnover package, provide it to them, and then once everything else gets turned in, I can backfill and complete that entire turnover package. And this was actually one of the things people told us was time consuming. You guys saw that number before. The amount of time generating a turnover package manually with other products is extremely cumbersome. So you'll see here, I'm just going to select all the items that I have. I'm going to click on continue. Now we've got the ability to organize this. These templates are essentially an organizational structure for your turnover package. You can see here we give you some pre-built templates, or you can create your own customizable template. I'm just going to do it by submittal type in this case. Once you do that, you're going to see here all this information is going to come in a file folder structure for you. All of your by submittal or closeout requirement type here. You can see here all that documentation is going to be included. We break out the file folder structure for you, so you can see here in special warranty we've done it by division and then by subcontractor in this case. So once that information is here, now the other nice part about this is if you have data in a third-party data repository, Box, Dropbox, say you've got it in your project management software, you can also import that information. You also have the ability to include that information from your laptop as an example, or if you've got it stored someplace else. You can add in additional file information as part of this process. Once I'm done here, I'm just going to click on this continue button. On this next page, we're going to provide you with the ability to create some design elements. So with this, you've got the ability to go through and create a cover page. You can select the type of text that's being used. You can add some design elements. And then with that, once everything's complete, all you need to do is click on this view turnover package, and then the system's going to go through and generate that. And what the system is actually doing as we generate it, and we're doing this live for you, so you'll see this pop up in 1 second here, is we're going through and we're creating the cover page for you. We're actually automatically generating a table of contents. Within that table of contents, we are creating hyperlinks to all of the documentation that was included as part of that process as well. So that way, once this gets turned over to the ownership team, they've got the ability to go through and review this documentation. If they need to find a warranty, if they need to find any other specific information, they've got the ability to quickly and easily do so. So you guys can see here, right, from start to finish, it's taken us about 2 minutes to go through, select all of our closeout requirements, do a little bit of stylization, add some information in, and you can see in a matter of 2 minutes, we have a turnover package. In this case, it's 581 pages. So you guys can imagine, in the time that it took us to go through and do this, could you have gone through and added in slip sheets? Could you have created a table of contents? Could you have created a cover page? Make sure everything was backlinked correctly and had all of the required documentation in it. It's absolutely impossible to do it with other methods, and that's why we went through and did this, is we wanted to cut down on the amount of time it took to actually create that turnover package. So you can see here on this first page, we've got the cover page with the specific look at our project. That can all be configured. We've got all of the project information. Here's going to be our table of contents. You can see here this is broken up all by the types of closeout requirements that were turned in. And then here, for any of these warranties, you can see, or any of this information that's been turned in, I can click on my list. It's going to snap me directly to that specific document. You can see here that Asphalt Shingle Products Limited Warranty is included here. I can review it, and if I do ever need to go back to that table of contents, I've got the ability to do so as well. So you can see this is actually something that the facilities and maintenance team has the ability to actionably work with. So if they've got a warranty claim, if they need to figure out how to work an AHU, if they need to figure out how to work an air handling unit as an example, they can go directly to that information, search through this, find it within that turnover package that you're providing them with. So I can go to that O&M manual in this case, review that information, make sure that we're operating within that procedure. And in the end, what you're really going to have is you're going to have a happier owner, you're going to have a happier facilities and maintenance team, and this in turn should lead to you to getting more negotiated work. So that's the majority of what I wanted to show you today. There's a whole lot more that we built into the system that you can utilize. We have a whole bunch of different people and organizations within the system utilizing this in a couple of different ways. We have some unique requirements that we need to meet for specific owners as well, which is nice because we can get this all set up for you so that you can then mimic that process or copy that process from project to project that you're working on them with. So that's my part here. What I'm going to do, Sharissa, I'll turn it back over to you, and let me know if there are any questions that I can get answered as part of this process.
Thank you, John. Yes, we did have a few questions come in. The first one is, how far in advance of the turnover date do project teams typically set this up?
That's a very good question because it really varies. My suggestion would be is if you have a project that is of highly complex, let's say you've got a lot of MEP that you need to take care of, or there's a complex MEP process, it's a large building, or it's a large facility, stadium, whatever it may be, I always like to get the stuff set up earlier rather than later. One of the things some of our clients are actually doing right now is we're trying to start a closeout from day one program. And what that really means is when subcontractors are going to manufacturers to get their submittal data for the submittal requirements process, they can actually get other information from their manufacturers. A good example is O&M manuals, right? So they can go get that information. That way they don't have to go to a manufacturer twice and grab that. They can also get the warranty information and then fill in dates and get all the stamps and stuff later. But if you get this set up earlier, there's only one ask for them when they're going to get that manufacturer information. As an example, it's going to ease their burden, and you're also going to make them far more aware of the requirements that they need to get turned in earlier in the process. That way there are no surprises down the road when, say, you're 2, 3, maybe a month out from substantial completion. Now, granted, my team is here to help move stuff along as part of this process too. So if you are in a rush, we can definitely help you out to get something closed out. We will have to pay a little bit more attention to that. We'll be more active in that process. But my suggestion is to always get this set up far earlier. And if you can, make this as part of your actual submittal turn-in process, because that will actually help facilitate the collection of some of this data. Any other questions, Charissa?
Yes, a few more. The next one is, do the subcontractors need to upload and communicate direct to the PIPE project software, or are they able to use an Outlook email link?
That's a good question. So with that, they actually don't need to be able to navigate to the PIPE platform on their own. In the emails that get sent out from the system, the way that those look and the way that they're set up is that they're provided with a specific list of all the requirements that they need to get turned in. For each of those requirements, there's actually a link that they can click on. With that link, they can log into the system and then upload those specific requirements that they need to get turned in. We've found that in some cases, right, for other software out there, especially in this space, there is a good deal of subcontractor training that needs to take place, especially if you're out there, snapping QA/QC issues with an iPad, you're marking stuff up, you need to move things through a workflow. But in this case, the stuff is really self-explanatory. It's real easy. They just need to click on a simple link, drag and drop a document into essentially a box. Once that information is dropped in, then that will update information in the system saying that that item has been submitted by the subcontractor. And then whoever's checking this from the general contractor side, they've got the ability to go through, review this information, and then move it along that workflow or kick it back to the subcontractor. So there's no real training required on the subcontractor side. We've got great adoption on this so far from the subs, and we've received some great feedback from them in making this very easy for them.
Okay. The next question is it possible to manage the submittal process with Closeout? The reason I ask is we currently do this via Excel and it doesn't work well.
Yeah, that's a question I've been hearing more and more recently. The reason being is the workflow capacity. We're providing you with the ability to see where you are from a completion percentage. We actually do have a couple of clients currently who are utilizing this as a submittal workflow process too, so they can get their architects, the OAE group involved as well. It is purpose-built specifically for Closeout as an example, but we do have the ability to track submittal requirements via this as well. The nice part about that too is if you do need to bundle everything up at the end into a package, you can quickly and easily do so with the platform. If you want to learn more about that and hear a couple of different use cases, you can actually contact me, reach out to us after the fact, and we'll make sure that we provide you with that information. Any other questions, Charissa?
No other questions came in via chat, so let's open up everyone's audio so that if people want to just volunteer a question, you can.
Great. All right, any questions out there? Go ahead and fire away.
Okay, well, John, that was very thorough. I guess you answered everyone's questions. Is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I think that was it. The key takeaways I think from this for people to remember is the cost associated with closing out a building or a project from a human capital perspective, from a time savings perspective, also from a cash flow and time value money perspective. There are a lot of benefits of taking advantage of a system like this. If you do need help sort of trying to sell this up the chain, as an example, we can provide you with some detailed analysis on the actual ROI of using a platform like this. We can take your real-time data based on your projects that you've run in the past, provide you with what we expect to be a savings, and then also apply that out to your projects this year or over the next 3 years. People typically have a good idea of what they're going to be looking at, what they're going to be bidding on, so we can help to get you a better number based on that. If you have any other questions, you guys saw my email address at the very beginning of this. It's John, John, Bennett, Bennett, @pipe.io. Please feel free to reach out. I can run you through all those different scenarios. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to jump on today. We're really excited about showing people this. It's been, the reception so far has been great, and we'd love to get you to try it out on one of your next projects. So thank you very much, Charissa.
Thank you, John, and thank you everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your day.